She lay motionless in a hospital bed, IV tubes tangled like chains across her bruised arms. Stage 2, cervical cancer. That's what the doctors said. But what hurt more than the diagnosis was the look in her husband's eyes. He wasn't scared. He was impatient. When the nurse begged him to stay until morning, he sighed and muttered, "I can't waste my life on you and those brats." Then he turned his back and walked straight out of that hospital, leaving his wife to die. Hours later, that same man was photographed at a rooftop bar, kissing his lover under gold lights, laughing like nothing ever happened. The world saw a devoted husband grieving in public, raising money, giving speeches, even using her name for charity. But behind those perfect smiles, he was stealing everything she'd built. What he didn't know was that the woman he left to die was still alive, and the empire he thought he'd stolen, the $100 million fortune, already belonged to her. Because sometimes the dead don't stay buried. They rise quietly to watch you fall. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The sound of the heart monitor cut through the air like a countdown. Beep, 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 each one weaker than the last. Elena's eyes flickered open beneath the harsh white lights. Her lips were pale, her skin cold. Tubes crossed her frail arms, her body was a battlefield. Every breath scraped through her chest. Across from her, Mark stood stiff in a navy suit, his arms crossed, phone in hand. Dr. Lewis lowered his chart, his tone gentle but firm. Stage 2, cervical cancer. We'll begin chemo first thing tomorrow. Mark didn't look up. He scrolled through his phone, sighing loudly. Tomorrow? He muttered. She doesn't even look like she'll make it through the night. Grace, the young ally nurse, glanced sharply at him. Sir, please, your wife can hear you. Mark turned, eyes cold, voice sharp. You think I don't know? She's been collapsing from exhaustion. She's drained our savings. His voice cracked into a cruel whisper. Already as good as dead. The words hung heavy in the room. The silence was loud. It wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Elena's fingers trembled as she reached for him. Mark, please, don't give up on me. He stepped back, avoiding her eyes. You're nothing but a burden now. I can't waste my life on you and those brats. Grace froze. Brats? The twins, he said, without emotion. Our twins. 4 months old, and she can't even feed the babies without crying. Elena's voice cracked. They need you. He cut her off. They'll be fine. They're asleep. You should rest too. He turned toward the door. Grace whispered, Where are you going? Mark's reply was almost casual. Home. I have business. The hospital room was too quiet as the door clicked shut. Grace turned back, eyes soft with pity. Don't move, Mrs. Reed. I'll get you some water. But Elena wasn't listening. Her mind replayed every second of that look, the way her husband's eyes held no fear, only freedom. The man she loved had just walked away, abandoning her in sickness and despair. She looked at her reflection in the metal IV pole, whispering, He wanted me gone. He wanted a clean slate. Grace returned, holding a cup. You need rest. The treatments, the options, the survival rates you have to fight. Elena nodded weakly. I will, but not for him, for my children. Outside, the faint buzz of a text notification echoed from the hallway. Grace frowned. Mark's phone had lit up before he left, a name flashing across the screen. V. Grace whispered to herself. Who's Vanessa? The lights dimmed as Elena closed her eyes. Her heart monitor steadied. Grace stepped closer, tucking the blanket around her. Sleep, Mrs. Reed, she said softly. Tomorrow's another day. But as she turned away, Elena's voice came faintly through the dark. If I don't make it, tell him. He buried me alive. Grace's eyes widened. Outside the room, the hallway camera caught Mark walking toward the elevator, phone to his ear, whispering, I miss you already. Can't wait to see you again, V. And as the doors closed, the light above the elevator flickered a silent warning that the next day would change everything. Grace looks toward the security monitor and mutters, Something's not right about him. The morning light cut through the hospital blinds like knives. The hallway buzzed with phones, charts, and hurried footsteps. But inside room 204, everything was chaos. Mark stood by the nurse's counter, waving a stack of papers, his voice rising. I said, discharge her. Today. Nurse Grace flinched. Sir, your wife isn't stable. She collapsed from exhaustion last night. She needs care. Mark slammed the clipboard down. She needs to stop pretending. She's wasting space and draining everyone's time. The security guard, Tom, stepped closer, his tone careful. Sir, please lower your voice. This is a hospital. Mark turned sharply. You think I care? My wife has stage 2 cervical cancer, and instead of fighting, she's giving up. You know what that makes her? Dead weight. Dr. Lewis appeared, frowning. Mr. Reed, we can't discharge a patient in this condition without consent, Mark snapped. Then get it. She'll sign whatever you put in front of her. Inside the room, Elena struggled to sit up. Her lips were cracked, her body weak, but she heard every word. The silence was loud after his shouting faded. Grace rushed to her side. I don't have to do this, Mrs. Reed. He's angry, but Elena interrupted softly. He wants me gone. He said it last night. Her voice broke. He thinks I'm already dead. Grace squeezed her hand. Don't give him that power. Minutes later, Mark entered with a fake smile. Honey, he said sweetly, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. You're my brave wife. The world's praying for you. He turned to Grace and Dr. Lewis. I just posted online asking for prayers and strength. People are already commenting. Elena stared at him, numb, publicly asking for strength for his brave wife, pretending to be the man she once loved. Grace noticed his phone screen light up. I miss you already. Can't wait to see you again, V. The mistress again, Elena whispered. Don't let him near my babies. Mark froze. What did you say? Our twins, she breathed. They're all I have. He smirked. They're fine. I hired a nanny, you rest, okay? Then under his breath, cold and quiet, don't try to find me. He turned and signed the discharge forms with Dr. Lewis watching uneasily. Grace noticed the signature line for responsible party. Mark wrote his own name. Outside, cameras flashed Mark posing with nurses, thanking the hospital for supporting cancer awareness. People clapped. Some even cried, selling himself as a dedicated father and mental health advocate. But inside, Elena lay trembling, watching through the glass as he smiled for the world. Grace leaned close, whispering, He's not coming back, is he? Elena's eyes filled with tears. No, but he'll remember me. Suddenly, her heart monitor spiked. Beep, beep, beep. She gasped for air pains shooting through her chest. Dr. Lewis rushed in. We're losing her. She's crashing, Grace shouted. Stay with me, Elena. Elena reached for Grace's wrist, whispering through fading breath. If I live, don't tell anyone. Let him think I'm gone. The monitor flatlined for 2 seconds, then jolted back. Grace's eyes widened. She's breathing. Dr. Lewis sighed in relief. She's alive. Barely. Grace wiped her tears, whispering to herself, sometimes survival is louder than vengeance. Through the glass, Mark gave one last fake wave before walking out the front doors, briefcase in hand, smile wide. Grace stared after him, jaw tight. He buried her alive, she muttered, and he'll pay for it. As Mark stepped into his car, his phone buzzed again. Vanessa's voice message played. It's done, baby. The world thinks she's gone. Now it's just us. He laughed softly, not knowing the hospital cameras had captured every second. The public mask of a grieving husband begins, and the first thread of his fake life starts to unravel. Crystal glasses clinked under the glow of gold chandeliers. The restaurant pulsed with soft jazz and expensive perfume, but at one corner table, deceit was the main dish. Mark leaned back in his chair, dark suit crisp, tie loosened just enough to look grieving but surviving. Across from him sat Vanessa, a woman in a red silk dress whose smile could slice glass. She raised her glass and whispered, To freedom, darling. You deserve this. Mark's eyes gleamed. Freedom tastes expensive. Ethan, the waiter, stepped forward with careful grace. Good evening, sir. Would you like another bottle of Chateau Margaux? Vanessa grinned. Yes. We're celebrating. The restaurant photographer, Maya, captured a candid moment, Mark laughing, Vanessa's hand resting over his. The same man who, just hours ago, told the world he was a widowed father of twins and a mental health advocate. When Maya's flash went off, Vanessa's assistant, a young man in a gray suit, frowned. "No photos tonight," he whispered, shielding her face. Vanessa waved him off. "Relax. Let them see us. It's fine, people know who I am." Mark chuckled, swirling his wine. "Not yet, baby. The timing must be perfect. The media still thinks I'm the devoted husband. Let's milk that." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through notifications, comments pouring in under his charity post. "You're so strong. Mark, your wife would be proud. A man like you gives hope." He smiled. "Look at that. The sympathy's working. People love a story about pain, especially when it's fake." Vanessa laughed softly. "And when will the money come through?" Mark leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Soon. I forged her signature on the insurance claim. Once the system clears it, I'll get the transfer. After that, we build our empire." Maya, standing by the bar, froze mid-shot. The words "forged her signature" echoed in her mind. Her lens zoomed in, instinctively capturing Mark's grin and the glittering ring on his hand, the same ring seen in Elena's hospital photos. As Vanessa's assistant adjusted her shawl, Vanessa said coldly, "She was weak, always sick. You did what any man would do." Mark smirked. "Yeah, she was nothing but a blank page." The waiter placed the new wine on the table, glancing nervously at them. Mark handed him a $100 bill. "Forget our faces." Ethan hesitated. "Sir, Mark's voice hardened. "Forget them." He left the bill and turned back to Vanessa. "By next month, I'll launch the Protagonist Foundation for Women's Cancer Awareness under my name, of course. We'll get tax breaks and media love." Vanessa raised her glass again. "To building a new life on her grave." They clinked glasses. The camera flash went off again. Mark didn't see Maya lower her lens, her face pale. She quietly whispered to herself, "He walked away from his wife's hospital bed for this?" She checked the photo preview, Mark kissing Vanessa under gold chandeliers and soft piano music. A perfect scandal framed forever. Outside, thunder rolled. Mark slipped his arm around Vanessa and whispered, "It's just you and me now." Maya uploaded the photo to her private drive, labeling it, "The Man Who Buried His Wife Alive." As Mark and Vanessa left the restaurant, a soft voice came through his phone speaker, an automated message. "Your insurance claim for Mrs. Elena Reed has been approved." His smile widened. He didn't know someone else had already seen everything. Maya's hand trembled as she whispered to herself, "If this goes public, someone's life will explode." The hospital alarms blared. Nurses rushed down the corridor, but in room 204, everything was still too still. Elena lay motionless on the bed, eyes half open, heart monitor steady but faint. To anyone passing by, she looked gone. Grace stood by the door, breathing hard, her mind racing. She had seen Mark's cruelty, his forged papers, his lies. He wanted her gone. He wanted a clean slate, and now, the system was helping him erase her. Grace whispered under her breath, "Not today." She unplugged the IV quietly, folding the cords like rope. Then she grabbed a wheelchair. "We're leaving," she said softly. Elena stirred weakly. "Leaving?" Grace nodded. "Yes, right now, before he cashes in on your death." Elena's lips trembled. "But how?" Grace's eyes darted to the hallway camera, red light blinking. "Through the back service exit. No one checks there after shift change." Extreme urgency filled the air. She rolled Elena down the hallway, avoiding the main wing. Every footstep echoed like thunder. At the discharge desk sat Mrs. Jenkins, an older clerk with soft eyes and shaking hands. Grace leaned close, whispering, "I need a patient release under alias. No questions." Mrs. Jenkins froze. "Grace, if the board finds out, please." Grace cut her off. "Her husband forged her death certificate. He's trying to claim insurance. She'll die for real if she stays here." Mrs. Jenkins looked between them, Elena's bruised face, the dried tears, the slow heartbeat. "Alias name?" Grace didn't hesitate. "Elena Reed becomes Anna Miller." Mrs. Jenkins hesitated, then stamped the form. "You didn't get this from me." Grace smiled faintly. "Thank you." Elena managed a whisper. "Why help me?" Grace looked at her. "Because I'm a nurse. And because, one day, Someone might need to save me too. They moved quickly down the back corridor. The world outside the exit door was gray, the sky heavy but calm. The storm that once raged in Elena's life had quieted, but only for now. She shivered as Grace draped a hospital blanket over her. Her body was fragile, but her eyes burned with something new resolve. I lost everything, Elena murmured. My home, my name, my babies. Grace stopped the wheelchair and knelt in front of her. You didn't lose them. You're just building yourself in silence. Let him think you're gone. Elena's tears fell quietly. He'll climb higher. Grace nodded. Then he'll fall harder. They reached the service door. Grace looked around, then pressed the exit bar. The door clicked open, spilling golden evening light into the hall. Elena took her first step outside barefoot, trembling but alive. Where will you go? Grace asked. Elena looked at the horizon. Someplace quiet. A place no one knows my name. Grace squeezed her hand. Then go, Anna. And when the world finally sees the truth, make sure he hears your name again. A hospital van drove past. Inside, a file folder lay forgotten on the passenger seat. Forged documents, transfer records, and a signature that didn't belong to Mark's wife. Elena glanced at it, her jaw tightening. Keep it safe, she said. That folder will end him one day. Grace nodded, watching as Elena disappeared into the setting. Sunday, Grace whispered to herself. She'll need a place to hide. Maybe that quiet rural town 3 hours west, the one with the old storefront. The bus screeched to a stop on a dirt road lined with sagging fences and shuttered windows. Dust swirled in the air. Elena stepped down slowly, clutching a small duffel bag to her chest. Her hospital bracelet still clung to her wrist, proof of the grave she'd just escaped. The cold wind bit through her thin sweater. A wooden sign creaked overhead. Welcome to Willow Creek Population, 2108. She took a shaky breath. This was it, a quiet rural town, far from the world that thought she was dead. Her steps were unsteady as she approached an old 2-story building with a faded sign, for rent. The front window was cracked, but sunlight spilled through it like hope forcing its way back in. A voice called from inside. You lost, miss? She turned to see Mr. Jenkins, a stout man in his 60s with a gentle smile and a limp. Name's Jenkins. I own the place. I'm looking for a room, Elena said softly. And maybe some work. He studied her, the tired eyes, the trembling hands, the faint scars from IV lines. You're running from something, he said, not unkindly. Elena hesitated, then nodded. From the past, he shrugged. Well, around here, everyone's hiding from something. He handed her an old brass key. Room's upstairs. Rent's cheap. You fix things, you stay. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Thank you. Inside, the room smelled of dust and old wood. She sat on the edge of the bed, pulling out the one thing she'd managed to keep, a worn photo of her twins. Their baby faces smiled up at her, untouched by betrayal. She traced their cheeks with her thumb, whispering, Our twins. Mama's still breathing. Tears rolled down her face as she pressed the photo to her heart. The silence was loud, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was safe, hidden. A knock came at the door. A woman stood there with a kind face and messy curls. Sarah, a neighbor from across the street, holding a tray of soup. You must be the new tenant, Sarah said warmly. I figured you'd be hungry. Elena smiled weakly. You didn't have to. Please, Sarah interrupted. Around here we look after each other. As Elena took the tray, her hands trembled. Thank you, truly. Sarah's eyes softened. You remind me of someone I used to know, someone who'd been through hell but didn't let it break her. Elena looked away, swallowing tears. I'm trying. Sarah nodded. Keep trying. You never know who's watching your fight. When Sarah left, Elena looked around the small room again, the cracked walls, the flickering bulb, the faint hum of life outside. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She reached into her duffel bag and pulled out a small notebook labeled J&L Home Goods. Inside were sketches, plans for a small business, making handmade goods from women in local shelters. This is where I start, she whispered. A soft knock echoed again. She opened the door to find an envelope lying on the floor, no name, no address, just one line inside, written in black ink. Build yourself in silence. Let him think you're gone. Her breath caught. She knew that handwriting, Nurse Grace. Tears welled as she whispered, "I will." She placed the note inside the notebook and stared out the window as the sun set, the sky painted in amber and rose. But at the edge of town, a black SUV slowed near the old post office. Inside, a man in a suit flipped through a file marked "Insurance Claim Approved." He smiled coldly. "She's gone. Officially." Elena's hand tightened around the notebook. "If the world thinks I'm gone," she whispered, "then maybe I can finally learn how to live." The sound of hammering filled the old storefront, echoing down the narrow street of Willow Creek. Dust hung in the air, sunlight cutting through it like hope breaking through fog. Elena stood on a wooden stool, painting a faded wall pale blue. Her hands shook, but not from weakness, from purpose. Each brushstroke was an act of defiance. Outside, a sign leaned against the door, "Coming soon, J&L Home Goods." Sarah, the kind neighbor who'd become her closest ally, peeked through the doorway. "You sure you want to open a business here, Anna?" she asked, using Elena's new name. Elena smiled faintly. "Yes, this town needs jobs. The shelters are full of women like me, women who were left behind." Sarah stepped closer, setting down a basket of fabric scraps. "You sound like someone who's been burned." Elena paused, her eyes distant. "I was." Her voice softened. "But sometimes life writes a different ending." Sarah tilted her head. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" Elena looked up, eyes sharp. "A past that could kill me if it finds me." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then maybe this shop is your safe place." A quiet rebellion. The intensity eased into reflection. Elena sat at the work table, her hands covered in paint. "When I was in the hospital, I thought dying would be easier than fighting, but then I heard my babies cry in my dreams. I couldn't leave them to his lies." Sarah reached out gently. "Then build this for them. Make something that keeps you alive." Elena smiled through tears. "I will." "Build yourself in silence," Grace told me. She was right. Her phone buzzed. A private number flashed on the screen. Elena's heart raced as she answered. "Grace?" The familiar voice came through, urgent but calm. "I have news. The insurance claim went through. Mark took the money. He's been on TV, pretending to run a charity in your name." Elena's grip tightened on the phone. "Selling himself as a dedicated father and mental health advocate," she said bitterly. "Yes," Grace replied. "But listen, something strange happened. A journalist named Maya is asking questions. She saw him with a woman in red. Be careful, she might become your ally, or she might be his threat." Elena glanced at the signboard again, the name J&L glinting in the afternoon light. "Let her dig," she said softly. "The higher he climbs, the harder he'll fall." Sarah frowned. "What's wrong?" Elena ended the call. "Nothing," she said quietly. "Just the past knocking again." They continued working in silence. The small shop filled with the smell of wood polish and fresh paint. For the first time, Elena felt something close to peace. She hung a small frame on the wall, the photo of her twins, smiling beside the words, "Home is what we build, not what we're given." The doorbell jingled. Sarah turned. "We're closed, sir." A delivery man stood there, holding a large brown envelope. "Delivery for Miss Anna Miller," he said. Elena hesitated. "Who's it from?" He shrugged. "No return address." She took the envelope and tore it open. Inside was a stack of copies of forged documents, financial transactions, and one line scrawled across the top. "You don't know me, but I know what he did." Her breath caught. Grace didn't send this. Sarah's eyes widened. Then who did? Elena looked out the window, the town glowing gold under the evening Sunday. "Someone's watching him," she whispered. "And maybe they're watching me too." The last line of the note glinted under the light. The Protagonist Foundation Gala, 3 months. Elena's eyes hardened. "Let him have his gala," she whispered. "That's where his story ends." Cameras flashed like lightning as the black limousine pulled up to the red carpet. Mark stepped out first, dark suit, white smile, practiced grief. Beside him, Vanessa emerged in a glittering red gown, her hand slipping discreetly into his. The crowd gasped. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Reed, is it true tonight's event honors your late wife? How does it feel to lead the Protagonist Foundation for Women's Cancer Awareness?" Mark placed his hand over his heart, lowering his eyes as if in sorrow. I'm doing this to honor her legacy, he said, his voice steady. She was brave. She fought chemo with courage. I just want to keep her spirit alive. Applause broke out. Some people even cried. The PR manager, a young woman with a clipboard and earpiece, whispered, "Perfect. Stay emotional." Cameras love that. Mark nodded, slipping back into character. She'd want me to help others, he said for the microphones. That's what love is, sacrifice. But behind the stage lights, his real smile emerged, sharp, selfish, calculated. Inside the ballroom, everything shimmered. Gold chandeliers and soft piano music, floral walls, and 1,000 eyes watching. Mark raised his glass on stage. To my wife, Elena Reed, a woman who taught me compassion. The audience clapped. Some wiped tears. Others whispered, "You're so lucky to have a man like him." Beside the stage, Vanessa leaned against the pillar, whispering, "They really bought it." Mark smirked. "They always do. People love heroes, even fake ones." The PR manager handed him a folder. "Press release for tomorrow. You'll trend by morning." He flipped it open, headlines already drafted. Mark Reed, the humanitarian of the year. Mark grinned. "I like the sound of that." As he returned to the table, Vanessa leaned close. "After this, you'll have everything: money, fame, power. You can finally stop pretending." He took a sip of champagne. "I'll stop pretending when the past stops breathing." Vanessa frowned. "You think she's really gone?" He laughed quietly. "She's dead. The hospital signed it. Forged my death certificate, remember? I handled everything." But the camera near the dessert table zoomed in, recording every word. Vanessa traced the precise rim of her glass. "Sometimes ghosts come back in unexpected ways, Mark." He raised an eyebrow. "You sound paranoid." She looked away. "No, just realistic." The pianist shifted to a softer melody. Mark glanced at the massive portrait of Elena projected behind him, her smiling face from their wedding day. For the first time all evening, something inside him flickered a flash of discomfort. He looked away quickly. But across the ballroom, among the servers and staff, a woman paused while pouring champagne, her eyes locked on that portrait. She froze, heart racing. She looked exactly like Elena. The PR manager whispered into her headset, "Who is that? She's not on the staff list." Before anyone could react, the woman turned and disappeared through the crowd. Mark adjusted his tie, unaware. "Let's make this a night to remember," he said, stepping onto the stage again. Behind him, the giant screen flickered just for a moment, as if someone was testing the feed. Then the portrait changed to a black background with a single glowing sentence. "Sometimes the one you abandon returns." The room went silent. Mark frowned. "What was that?" Vanessa froze, gripping his arm. "That wasn't part of the program." The PR manager's headset crackled. "We didn't upload that message." The pianist stopped playing. From the back of the room, a woman's voice whispered through the live feed speakers, calm, controlled, haunting. "This is only the beginning." The cafe door slammed open, and Maya Brooks, a sharp-eyed investigative journalist in her 30s, rushed in carrying a folder thick with documents. Her laptop bag thudded against the wooden floor. "You need to see this," she said, breathless. Across the table sat Elena, wearing a dark coat and sunglasses. Her once fragile frame now carried quiet strength. She lifted her gaze slowly. "I was told you were discreet." Maya opened the folder, revealing pages. Stamped confidential. Forged transfers, tax evasion, and fake charity accounts, all under Mark Reed's name. Someone sent these anonymously. Charity, embezzlement, identity theft, even forged hospital forms. Does any of this look familiar? Elena's eyes darkened. Every line, every signature. He used my foundation, the Protagonist Foundation for Women's Cancer Awareness, to launder stolen donations. Grace, who had been standing guard near the door, stepped closer. He even drained her savings and her mother's inheritance. Maya's pen paused. "So the rumors are true. You're supposed to be dead." Elena didn't blink. "Let's keep it that way." The journalist sat back, her voice softening. "You're risking everything by meeting me." "Why now?" Elena leaned forward, her tone cold but calm. "Because the truth needs eyes, and I need proof." Maya studied her carefully. "You don't want revenge, do you?" Elena shook her head. "Survival is louder than vengeance. I want justice quietly. The intensity eased into reflection. The rain outside tapped against the windows, steady like a heartbeat. Grace pulled a flash drive from her pocket and slid it across the table. It's everything: copies of forged documents, transfer receipts, and recorded calls. If we leak them strategically, the world will see who he really is. Maya's brows lifted. Then we'll expose him not through gossip, but through law. Just then, the cafe door opened again. A tall woman in a tailored gray suit entered. Clara Reed, attorney and longtime family friend. She walked straight to the table, her tone precise. I represent the Reed estate. You're Elena's legal counsel now, she told Maya calmly. Maya blinked. Wait, you're working with her? Clara nodded. I've been protecting her assets quietly. What he doesn't know is that the company's majority ownership still belongs to her. Elena looked stunned. My mother left it to me? Clara placed a thin folder in front of her. Yes. Before she died, she moved every share under your name. You own Reed Industries, valued at over $100 million. Elena's breath caught. So all this time, he was stealing from my empire? Maya's eyes widened. That means he's not just a liar. He's a felon. Grace smiled faintly. And the walls are closing in. Elena's trembling hands steadied as she whispered. Then it's time the world remembered who Elena Reed is. The lights flickered. Maya's phone buzzed a new message from an unknown number. She turned the screen toward Elena. Good evening. You don't have to hide anymore. He's already being watched. Elena's pulse quickened. Who sent that? Maya checked the metadata. It's coming from inside his company. Clara leaned in, voice low. Then we have an ally on the inside. Elena gathered the papers, her voice firm. Then let's finish what he started legally, publicly, and without mercy. The conference room at Reed Industries was filled with tension thick enough to cut. Computer screens glowed with financial data, and stacks of printed ledgers covered the table like evidence in a trial. Ron, the company's financial auditor, paced nervously, tapping his pen. These aren't just accounting errors, these are deliberate. Transfers, offshore wires, fake invoices, all under Mark Reed's digital signature. Mr. Parker, the gray-haired board chair, looked grim. If this leaks, the entire board will collapse with him. Investors will panic. The glass door opened quietly. Clara Reed entered first, briefcase in hand, her expression calm but severe. Behind her walked Elena, dressed in a black blazer, hair tied back, face composed yet unrecognizable from the frail woman she once was. Ron nearly dropped his pen. Mrs. Reed? But you're dead? She finished softly. Not anymore. The room froze. Elena moved closer to the head of the table, eyes scanning the documents. Show me everything. Maya, seated at the corner with her laptop, nodded. Every trail leads back to him. Charity embezzlement, forged signatures, even attempts to access your late mother's trust. Grace, who stood quietly behind her, whispered, He didn't just betray you. He betrayed every woman who believed in your foundation. Elena exhaled slowly, her fingers brushing over the company seal embossed on the report. My mother built this company with integrity. He turned it into a crime scene. The intensity eased into reflection. Her gaze drifted to a framed portrait of her mother on the wall. The same eyes, same quiet strength. For a moment, the memories flooded back. Her mother's voice, faint but steady. They'll strip you bare, but what's yours can never be stolen. She whispered. You were right, Mom. Clara opened her folder and slid a single document across the table. Before your mother passed, she filed an ownership transfer. Every share of Reed Industries belongs to you, Elena. Legally, you control the entire $100 million empire. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air vents. Mr. Parker's eyes widened. Then, technically, Mark Reed's been embezzling from his own wife's company. Maya looked up from her notes, and forging her death certificate to do it. Elena's expression didn't change. Then it's time to stop pretending he's untouchable. Grace smiled faintly. Not yet. Let him climb higher. The harder he'll fall. Elena nodded. Exactly. We won't leak it yet. We'll let him walk into his own fire. Ron blinked nervously. How? Clara closed her briefcase. Through truth. Maya, you'll record every transaction. Ron, verify the audits. Parker, prepare the emergency board summons. When the evidence is complete, we'll drop it publicly at the next gala. Maya grinned. A perfect storm! Elena looked out the window at the city skyline glowing under the sunset. He built his empire on my grave, she whispered. Now he'll watch me rise from it. Suddenly, Ron's phone buzzed on the table. He frowned. That's strange. I didn't. He opened the message, his face drained of color. Someone's already inside the system. Clara looked alarmed. Inside how? He turned the screen. A live notification blinked. Accessing private files, Reed Industries main server. User, M. Reed. Elena's voice dropped cold. He knows, Maya whispered. If he's in the system, he'll see every move we've made. Elena's eyes hardened. Then we let him watch. Sometimes you have to let the guilty dig their own grave. The city skyline shimmered outside the penthouse windows, but inside, chaos ruled. Mark's phone buzzed nonstop calls, alerts, notifications stacking like bricks of panic. He gripped the glass table so tightly his knuckles turned white. What do you mean there's an investigation? He snapped into the phone. On the other end, Ron, his financial auditor, stammered. Sir, regulators are reviewing your charity transactions. There were anonymous tips to the regulatory board, copies of transfers, forged signatures, even evidence of charity embezzlement. Mark's jaw clenched. Anonymous? Who would dare? Before Ron could answer, Vanessa, dressed in silk pajamas, strode into the room holding a glass of wine. What's happening now? He covered the receiver. Nothing I can't fix. Vanessa arched a brow. That's what you said when you forged her death certificate. He shot her a glare. Keep your voice down. But it was too late. The PR manager and event planner, standing near the living room projector, heard every word. Their eyes widened. Mark turned back to the call. Ron, calm down. Delete whatever you saw. This will all disappear. Ron's voice shook. Sir, the files are public. Someone leaked the documents to watchdog groups. You're trending. This isn't going away. Mark froze. His phone buzzed again, a headline alert flashing on the screen. Hero husband or hidden thief. Charity fraud allegations, shake Reed Industries. The intensity spiked. Mark hurled his phone across the room. It shattered against the marble floor. Vanessa flinched. Mark, get a grip! He paced, hands in his hair. It's her! He hissed. It has to be. She's behind this. She's haunting me. The PR manager hesitated. You mean, your wife? Mark spun toward her. She's gone. She's dead. The event planner spoke softly. Then why did the foundation email mention Elena Reed, primary owner? It came from your company server this morning. Mark's face went pale. What did you say? Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. Mark, what if she's alive? He shook his head violently. Impossible. I buried her. I signed it myself. Vanessa backed away, fear creeping into her tone. You forged her death certificate. If she's really alive, you're finished. Mark slammed his fist on the table, shattering a glass. No one crosses me. The room fell into silence. Then, as if on cue, the TV flickered to life. The network wasn't supposed to be on. Across the screen, a still image appeared, Elena's portrait. Her voice echoed faintly through the speakers. You can't bury the truth, Mark. Everyone froze. Vanessa whispered. That's her voice. Mark stumbled backward, eyes wide. It's a recording, a setup. But the voice spoke again, clearer this time. The truth always finds its way home. The screen went black. Mark stood trembling, sweat trickling down his temple. Get me the humanitarian gala list, he barked at the PR manager. If she's alive, she'll show her face there, Vanessa whispered. And if she does? He stared out the window, eyes burning. Then I'll make sure she dies twice. As thunder rolled outside, the PR manager whispered to the event planner. The gala's tomorrow, and if she really shows up. The event planner finished the sentence softly. It won't be him everyone's clapping for. The rain drummed against the window of the penthouse suite where Elena stood, staring at the city glowing beneath her. Tomorrow night the entire world would watch. Tomorrow night justice would finally breathe. But tonight was war in silence. Her reflection in the glass looked nothing like the woman who had once collapsed from exhaustion on a hospital bed. Her hair fell neatly over her shoulders, her posture tall, unshaken. She touched the scar on her wrist where the IV had once been. Her body was a battlefield, she whispered, and she won. The door opened quietly. Grace, carrying a garment bag, stepped in. "You look like you're about to walk into a fire," she said softly. Elena smiled faintly. "I am." Grace hung the bag over a chair and unzipped it, a long black gown, simple yet striking. "This is more than a dress," she said. "It's armor." The intensity simmered as Clara entered, folders tucked under her arm. "The evidence files are ready. Fraud, identity theft, forgery, and embezzlement all tied to his accounts. Once we hand them over to the press, the police will have no choice." Maya followed behind, camera bag slung over her shoulder, eyes sharp with conviction. "And when he walks on that stage tomorrow, I'll be filming. Every gasp, every tear, every lie breaking in real time." Elena exhaled deeply. "Good. Let the world see who he really is." Grace adjusted the bracelet on Elena's wrist. "Do you ever think about what comes after?" Elena's gaze softened. "After? After the truth. After the crowd stops clapping." Elena's voice trembled just slightly. "Then I start living again. Maybe I'll build a hospital for women like me. Maybe I'll raise my children without fear." She looked at the window again, her reflection merging with the skyline. "He abandoned us in sickness and despair, but tomorrow he'll see the woman he buried standing taller than his lies." Maya set up her camera tripod, recording test footage. "Your story isn't just about him, Elena. It's about every woman who ever had to build herself in silence." Elena nodded, emotion flickering across her face. "Silence taught me patience. Pain taught me power." Clara stepped closer, placing an envelope on the table. "Inside is your mother's final note. I found it when we reopened the safe deposit box today." Elena opened it slowly. The handwriting was familiar, graceful, trembling. "If the world forgets you, remind it who you are." Tears blurred her eyes. "I'll remind them, Mama." The thunder outside eased to a steady hum. Grace checked the clock. "It's almost midnight." Elena took one last look at her reflection and whispered, "Not yet. Let him climb higher. The harder he'll fall." Then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. She opened it, and her heart stopped. "See you tomorrow, Elena. Don't be late." Maya looked up. "Who sent that?" Elena's face went pale. "Mark," Clara whispered. "He knows you're coming." Elena folded the note in her hand, eyes like steel. "Good," she said. "Let him wait. This time, I'm the storm." The ballroom pulsed with flashbulbs and whispers. Reporters packed every corner, the air thick with perfume and deceit. Tonight was supposed to be Mark Reed's triumph, the Humanitarian of the Year gala honoring the Protagonist Foundation for Women's Cancer Awareness. But fate had other plans. Extreme intensity filled the room. Cameras swarmed as Mark stepped onto the red carpet, holding Vanessa's hand. She smiled like a queen beside him, her red dress catching every flicker of light. The event host, microphone in hand, boomed, "Let's welcome the man of the hour, the one who turned pain into purpose." Applause thundered. Mark raised his glass, his polished speech rehearsed to perfection. "I dedicate this night to my late wife, Elena Reed," he said solemnly. "She was my heart, my courage, and my reason to fight for others, battling women's cancer awareness." People wiped tears. Flashlights burst like fireworks. Then, from the back of the hall, heels clicked against marble, slow, steady, confident. The crowd turned. A woman in a black gown stepped through the entrance, the spotlight finding her face. For a heartbeat, time froze. Mark's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. "Elena?" he breathed, his voice cracked. "You're..." She smiled faintly. "Alive?" The room gasped as she walked forward, every camera turning to her. "You look surprised, Mark. Didn't you say you buried me?" Whispers rippled through the audience. Vanessa paled. "This can't be real," she muttered. The event host, caught in shock, dropped his cue cards. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Elena Reed." Elena took the microphone. Her voice was calm but cut through the hall like thunder. "I'm not here for applause. I'm here for truth." She turned to the crowd. "The man you celebrate tonight abandoned me in sickness and despair. He forged my death certificate, drained my savings, and turned my name into his business." The crowd erupted in gasps. Journalists shouted questions. Cameras zoomed closer. Mark staggered back. "You're lying." "You're not." Elena cut him off. "Every lie leaves a trail, Mark. And tonight, yours end." Vanessa grabbed his arm, whispering frantically, "Do something." But Mark was frozen, the world spinning around him. The intensity shifted into eerie silence. Elena's eyes glistened, her voice trembling with restraint. "You once said I was nothing but a blank page. Well, here I am, rewriting the story." She turned to the crowd, tears in her eyes. "To every woman who's been silenced, cheated, or forgotten, this is for you." The audience began to clap, softly at first, then louder. Some stood. Mark's breathing grew ragged. He tried to speak, but the room drowned him out. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the noise. "She's bluffing! She doesn't have proof!" Elena reached into her clutch, pulled out a silver flash drive, and held it up. "You're right," she said coldly. "I don't have proof, but the police officer waiting outside does." The double doors swung open. Uniformed officers entered. Gasps spread like wildfire. Mark stumbled backward, panic flashing across his face. "You set me up." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "No, Mark, you set yourself up." The officer stepped forward. "Mark Reed, you are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, forgery, and embezzlement." Cameras flashed. Reporters screamed. Mark's perfect image cracked in front of the entire world. As he was handcuffed, Mark shouted over the chaos, "This isn't over!" Elena's eyes met his calm, unshaken. "No," she said softly. "It's only beginning. Mark Reed, you are under arrest." The officer's voice echoed through the grand ballroom like a gunshot. Extreme intensity seized the air. Guests gasped. Cameras whirred. The lights above flickered under the heat of chaos. Mark's face turned ghostly as the officer read the charges. Fraud, identity theft, forgery, and embezzlement. His entire empire, built on stolen breath, began to crumble before his eyes. Vanessa grabbed his arm, trembling. "Mark, say something!" He tried to speak, but his words came out strangled. "This is a setup. She's lying." The officer stepped forward, placing handcuffs around his wrists. The metallic click cut through the bite. Murmurs. Elena stood still beneath the spotlight, her black gown shimmering under the golden chandeliers. Cameras captured every angle, the betrayed wife standing tall against the man who'd left her to die in sickness and despair. Vanessa turned on her, eyes wild. "You ruined everything." Elena's voice was calm, almost sorrowful. "No, Vanessa. He ruined you when he promised a kingdom built on another woman's grave." Reporters shouted questions, flashes bursting like lightning. "Mrs. Reed, how did you survive? Did you fake your death? Is it true your husband stole from your foundation?" Elena raised a hand, silencing them. "I didn't fake anything. I was supposed to die, but sometimes life refuses to follow the script." The intensity softened into reflection. She turned toward the cameras, her voice steady but filled with quiet pain. "He left me in a hospital bed to rot, forged my death certificate, and stole my mother's inheritance. But while he was celebrating, I was rebuilding in silence." Her voice trembled, just enough to make the crowd lean in. "I learned that survival is louder than vengeance. You don't have to destroy someone to win. Sometimes you just have to keep living." The room fell completely silent. Even the officer paused for a heartbeat. Then Elena looked at Mark, his face red with fury and humiliation. "You once said I was nothing but a blank page. Well, Mark, I filled that page with truth." He lunged forward, the cuffs clinking. "You'll regret this." The officer pulled him back. "That's enough." Maya Brooks, standing by the media booth, whispered to her cameraman, "Keep rolling. The world needs to see this." Clara Reed approached Elena quietly. "It's over," she said softly. Elena's eyes glistened. "No, Clara. It's just beginning." The officer guided Mark toward the exit. As they passed Vanessa, she broke down, mascara streaking her face. "You said she was gone," Mark spat back. "She was." Elena took one final step toward them, her voice echoing across the ballroom. "You buried me alive, Mark. But you forgot one thing: you can't bury the truth." The crowd erupted into applause, some cheering, others crying. As the police dragged Mark toward the doors, a loud crash rang out. One of the projectors above the stage flickered to life, showing live footage of Mark's offshore accounts, his forged documents, and a single photo, him and Vanessa signing fake checks. The guest gasped again. Maya's camera zoomed in. "It's streaming live," she whispered. Mark froze. "Who did that?" Elena turned her head slightly. "Not me." On the balcony above, a hooded figure, unseen by the crowd, watched in silence before disappearing into the shadows. Clara leaned in, whispering, "Who was that?" Elena's eyes narrowed. "The person who helped me survive." The applause was thunderous. Camera flashes turned the grand hall into a storm of light. At the center of the stage stood Elena Reed, calm and radiant in a white gown that shimmered under the gold chandeliers. It had been exactly 1 month since the night that broke the world's illusion, and tonight, the world gathered again, to see what had risen from its ashes. Behind her, the banner read, "The Elena Reed Foundation for Women's Cancer Awareness, Hope Restored." Extreme intensity filled the room, not from chaos, but from unity. Survivors, mothers, and daughters stood together, tears glistening as Elena took the microphone. Maya Brooks, now standing near the press booth, whispered to her cameraman, "Roll live. The world needs to hear this." Elena's voice trembled softly at first. "A few months ago, I was called dead, forgotten. My name used for greed. My pain turned into profit. But sometimes survival is louder than vengeance." The crowd quieted. Every breath was hers. She continued, voice stronger now. "When? I lost everything. My health, my marriage, my home. I thought my story ended. But then I realized something. You can't bury the truth. It always finds light." Grace, watching from the front row, dabbed at her eyes. Clara smiled faintly beside her, proud. Elena glanced at them both. "To the people who stood by me when I had nothing, thank you. You taught me that silence isn't weakness. It's preparation." The intensity softened into reflection. She placed her hand over her heart. "This foundation isn't just mine. It belongs to every woman who's ever been told she's not enough. To every survivor who fought quietly. To every mother who whispered hope into the dark." Sarah, the kind neighbor from the quiet town, held her hands together and whispered, "She made it." Mr. Parker, representing Reed Industries, stepped forward. "Mrs. Reed, on behalf of the board, we are honored to have you back as rightful chairwoman. The empire your mother built and your husband stole is yours again." The audience erupted in applause. Some cheered, others cried. Elena smiled humbly. "Then let's make sure no woman's voice is ever stolen again." She looked directly into the cameras. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Grace hugged her tightly as reporters swarmed the stage. But as the noise roared, Maya Brooks noticed something strange on her live monitor, a private message flashing at the bottom of the broadcast feed. "Congratulations, Elena. Justice served. A friend inside." Maya frowned, glancing up at the balcony. A lone figure in a dark suit stood watching the same silhouette from the gala. "Who is that?" Maya whispered. Clara followed her gaze but found the balcony empty. Elena, unaware, waved at the crowd, smiling through tears. "Thank you, everyone. This is just the beginning." Outside, police sirens faded in the distance. Mark's transfer to prison complete, but one question lingered, in the air like smoke. As the lights dimmed and the audience filed out, the camera panned to the envelope on Elena's podium, unmarked, sealed in black wax. Written in silver ink were just 4 words, "We're not all done." After her mom died, husband threw wife and their twins girl out to marry her best friend. Unaware she owned the company, signing his $900 million deal, he didn't just walk out. The night after the memorial, Marcus slammed the front door, tossed a manila envelope on the table. Temporary separation, a prenup excerpt, and a small check. Then told Ilara to be gone by morning. Beside him stood Chloe, Ilara's best friend since college, watching with a quiet smirk. "Chloe and I are getting married. I'm days away from a $900 million signing with Helios. I won't risk domestic drama." Those were his words as he dragged the twins' little suitcases to the porch and locked the door. Rain hammered the steps. Mia clutched her stuffed rabbit. Ava wrapped her arms around Ilara's leg. From the upstairs window, Chloe's silhouette stood beside Marcus, laughing. He thought she was finished, but what he never knew was this. The company he bragged he would conquer, Helios, already belonged to the woman he threw out. Hours earlier, Ilara's phone had pinged. Orion Group, signing prep, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Helios Holdings, chairwoman. Her mother's gold pen waited on the desk. The succession papers were already signed. His big deal was walking straight into her boardroom. Sometimes the ones you discard become the ones you cannot escape. This isn't just betrayal. It's the moment a quiet signature turns grief into precision, and a $900 million boast becomes a trap. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Ilara's voice fade again. Click subscribe to stand with every mother and child forced out and every survivor who chose to rise. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. The sound of laughter died in the walls of the house that once felt alive. Paper plates, half-eaten casseroles, and wilting flowers cluttered the dining table. Evidence of sympathy that left as quickly as it came. The smell of lilies mixed with candle wax hung heavy in the air. Laura Hale stood by the window, still in her black dress. 34 years old, graceful but worn thin, she had the quiet poise of someone who'd spent her life holding everyone else together. Her mother had called her the anchor. Tonight, the anchor had nothing left to hold. From the hallway came the soft voices of her daughters. "Mommy, can Nana see us from heaven?" 5-year-old Mia asked, clutching her twin sister Ava's hand. The girls were identical, except for the small scar above Mia's eyebrow. Ilara forced a tender smile. "She can, sweetheart. She always could." Her voice trembled as she tucked them under the quilt her mother had knit years ago. Each stitch held a memory. Warm mornings, gentle advice, lessons whispered in kitchens. When the girl's breathing steadied, she lingered by the doorway. The house was silent except for the ticking clock. For the first time in weeks, there were no nurses, no machines, no calls from the hospital. Just absence. On the desk beside her, a velvet folder rested among condolence cards. The handwriting on the front froze her breath. To be opened after. Her mother's writing, elegant and sharp, like everything she did. Ilara opened it slowly, afraid of what after truly meant. In the inside were several documents bound in a red ribbon, stamped and notarized. The heading read, Helios Holdings, Succession Addendum. Her eyes widened as she read, "I, Eleanor Pierce, hereby appoint my daughter, Ilara Pierce Hale, as controlling owner and acting chairwoman of Helios Holdings, effective immediately. Retroactive 6 months from this date." She blinked hard. 6 months ago. That was when her mother's health started failing. When Ilara began spending nights in hospital rooms, pretending to answer work emails that were really directives to Helios's board. A faint flashback flickered, her mother's frail hand guiding hers over a signature line. "Never let anyone, not even the person you share a bed with, decide your worth," her mother had whispered. "Power is quiet, my dear. Use it that way." Ilara touched the seal at the bottom. Her mother had kept this secret, passing the company to her quietly, protecting her from the greedy curiosity of others, including Marcus. Her phone chimed. A reminder popped up. Orion Group, signing prep. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Chairwoman, Helios Holdings. The title made her throat tighten. Marcus had been bragging for weeks about an upcoming $900 million deal between Orion Group, his company, and Helios Holdings. He said it would change their lives forever. He never once mentioned her mother's company by name when talking about it to her. Ilara now understood why her mother insisted on privacy clauses and proxy directors. No public filings tied Ilara's name to Helios. Marcus, blinded by arrogance, never thought to look beyond appearances. He thought she was just the grieving daughter of a dying woman. She picked up her mother's old fountain pen, the one with the Helios crest engraved in gold. Her reflection in the glass case was steady, calm. "I'll make you proud, Mom," she whispered. The twins stirred softly in their beds as Ilara gathered the folder, slipping it into a drawer. She straightened the blanket one last time, letting her hand rest on the warm fabric. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the ache, the loneliness pressing against her chest. Then came the sound. A key rattled in the front door. Ilara's breath caught. The twins' room was down the hall. She stepped quickly into the living room. The lock turned twice, heavy and deliberate. The door creaked open. From the darkness beyond came a familiar voice, cool, confident, impatient. "Hope you haven't unpacked much," Marcus said. His tall frame filled the doorway. Suit still on, tie loosened, the faint scent of expensive whiskey clinging to him. He dropped his keys on the table and looked at her, eyes already distant. "We need to talk." Ilara's fingers brushed the drawer where the velvet folder now rested, hidden. Her expression didn't change, but her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Whatever came next would change everything. Some goodbyes come with flowers. Others begin with a key turning in the lock. The front door slammed open so hard it rattled the picture frames. Ilara spun around, clutching the edge of the table. Marcus Hale, her husband of 8 years, stepped in first, tall, polished, and cruelly composed. The faint smell of expensive whiskey followed him like arrogance. Behind him came Chloe Rivers, Ilara's best friend since college, the woman who had held her hand through childbirth, who knew her mother's favorite flowers, who had once promised, "I'll always protect your girls like they're mine." But now Chloe stood a step behind Marcus, wearing a smirk that didn't belong in a house still draped in mourning. Marcus dropped a manila envelope onto the coffee table. Papers spilled slightly, temporary separation, prenup excerpts, and a check with his neat, detached handwriting. For the kids, short term. The sound of the checkbook tearing seemed louder than thunder. Ilara's voice came out steady but faint. "You came with her?" Marcus loosened his tie, ignoring her tone. "I came with clarity. You've been off balance since your mother passed. It's affecting the girls, the house, everything." He gestured around as if grief was a stain on the furniture. Ilara stood still. "You're saying this tonight? In front of her?" Chloe crossed her arms, lips painted deep red. "He didn't plan to, Ilara, but someone has to tell you the truth. You've been living in your mother's shadow for too long." The words struck harder than any slap. Ilara's gaze sharpened, briefly, but she kept her composure. Marcus leaned forward, his tone suddenly businesslike. "I've been patient, but I can't build a future with someone drowning in the past. Chloe and we're getting married, quickly. I can't have any domestic mess during the Orion Helios signing." Ilara blinked slowly. "You mean your $900 million deal?" He smiled, mistaking her calm for defeat. "Exactly. Orion's about to make history, and I'm the man making it happen. You think those old Helios suits know how to negotiate? They'll crawl to my terms." Ilara's eyes flickered toward the Helios crest engraved on her mother's gold pen on the side table. The faintest smile touched her lips, gone before he noticed. "I see," she said softly. He took her silence as surrender. "You and the twins can leave by morning. The house will be in my name after the merger. I'll arrange something smaller for you. Chloe and will handle the rest." Chloe looked around as if appraising what would soon be hers. "We'll redecorate," she said lightly. "The energy here is too sentimental." Ilara looked at her, really looked. "You stood beside me at my wedding." Chloe's eyes didn't flinch. "And now I'll stand beside him at mine." For a moment, everything went still. The ticking clock stopped meaning anything. The laughter of her twins from the bedroom faded. The air seemed to fold around Ilara's grief, hardening it into something unbreakable. She finally whispered, "Then I wish you both the best." Marcus frowned, unsure. "That's it? No fight? No scene?" "No," she said, voice steady as steel. "You've already given me everything I need." Her calm unnerved him, but he shrugged it off. "Good. Don't make this harder than it has to be." He turned to leave, taking Chloe's hand as if she were already his wife. Ilara's gaze followed them until the door closed. Then, nothing. Just silence. It was an hour later when Marcus's cruelty took its final form. Rain started to pour, heavy and cold. The twins woke crying from the thunder. Marcus returned, his car engine idling outside. "You need to go now," he barked from the doorway, voice raised over the storm. "I've arranged for a driver. I don't want press seeing boxes tomorrow." "Marcus," she said quietly, "the girls are asleep." He didn't care. He dragged their small suitcases to the porch, tossing them beside her. "Then wake them up. I'm not repeating myself." Ava's tiny arms wrapped around her mother's leg, terrified. Mia clutched her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy, where are we going?" Marcus didn't even look at them. "With Mommy," he muttered. "I have a meeting." The rain hit Alara's face like pins as she stepped outside, holding both girls close. Her clothes soaked instantly, but she didn't move until the door shut behind her. The locks clicked, a sound colder than the storm. From the window above, Chloe's silhouette appeared beside Marcus's. She was laughing at something he said. The girls shivered and Alara knelt between them, pulling the blanket tighter around their shoulders. "It's okay, babies," she murmured. "This is just the end of one chapter." They climbed into the waiting car, headlights cutting through the rain. As the driver pulled away, Alara didn't cry. She looked back once, at the house, at the two shadows inside, and whispered something the wind carried away. The news spread quietly among their circle. Marcus Hale had married Chloe Rivers in a private garden ceremony. Photos leaked online, her white dress, his smug grin, the caption, "Orion Group CEO celebrates new beginnings as company approaches historic $900 million deal with Helios Holdings." But no one noticed the quiet woman watching the article on her phone from a small apartment, her twins asleep beside her. Her face was calm, her expression unreadable. She opened her contacts, scrolled to one name, and typed a short message. "John?" He took the bait. "See you 8:30. Alara set the phone down, closed her eyes, and let the storm outside fade into silence. Some storms wash everything away. Others clear the path for what's coming next. The night air was still heavy from the storm. Alara moved quietly through the small apartment, her every motion deliberate. A single lamp cast soft gold light over the packed bags on the floor, clothes folded tight, the twins' toys tucked between them. She didn't cry. She hadn't since the rain. On the kitchen counter sat her laptop, open to a folder labeled Orion, expense variances. A USB drive, sealed with red tape, waited beside it. The label was handwritten in her mother's steady cursive. Her fingers hovered over the laptop keyboard, but instead of typing, her mind pulled her backward, to the moment she had first seen this coming. 2 weeks earlier, dinner for two, crystal glasses, candles, the faint hum of jazz. Marcus looked like a man rehearsing success, phone in one hand, steak knife in the other. Alara had planned every word. "If Orion's numbers ever waver, would you protect your team first?" Marcus didn't even look up. "Loyalty is for people who can't count." He smiled to himself, slicing into his meal. "In business, you move with the money. That's survival." She had smiled faintly, the picture of a supportive wife. Inside, she felt the last trace of love fade. He noticed nothing, too busy explaining how he would soon be sitting across from those Helios fossils, reshaping their empire. That was the night Alara realized what he was, and that realization became her plan. A few days later, the hospital smelled of antiseptic and flowers. Alara sat by her mother's bed, reviewing reports on her Helios-stamped laptop. Chloe entered with coffee and sympathy. "You should rest, Alara," Chloe murmured, placing a hand on her shoulder. But her gaze drifted, quick and sharp, to the laptop screen, the faint Helios watermark in the corner. Chloe smiled too easily. "Still working? Even here?" Alara closed the lid slowly. "It helps me breathe," she said. That moment replayed now in Alara's mind, the flicker of curiosity in Chloe's eyes, a tiny spark of greed, unnoticed then, clear now. Back in the present, Alara zipped the girls' overnight bag and straightened the room. The twins were asleep on the couch, wrapped in one blanket. She picked up a framed photo of her wedding day, Marcus's arm around her, Chloe beside them as bridesmaid. Her stomach twisted. She set it down. The only picture she kept was one of her and her mother, taken years ago at the Helios building's ribbon cutting. Two women who built something together, brick by brick, while everyone underestimated them. Alara slid the USB into the hidden pocket of her bag. It held everything: records of Orion's shady expense trails, inconsistencies in Marcus's budgets, files she'd been collecting for months. She hadn't meant to use them against him. Not then. But now, they were her insurance. Before turning off the light, she looked up at the ceiling. A small black dot blinked near the corner, one of the landlord's old security cameras. Her breath caught. Had Marcus installed new ones in the house before she left? Had Chloe? The tiny red light blinked again, steady and alive. Ilara stepped closer, staring at her own reflection in the lens. "If you're watching," she whispered, "watch closely. You'll want to see how this ends." She unplugged the lamp, plunging the room into darkness. The twins stirred softly but didn't wake. Outside, a car engine idled somewhere in the night, and Ilara's phone vibrated once on the counter, a reminder from her calendar. Helios board, emergency prep, 8:30 a.m. She slipped the phone into her coat pocket and looked back at her sleeping daughters. Tomorrow they'll learn who their mother really is, she thought. The red camera light flickered once more. Then it went out. Some secrets hide behind glass screens, some behind boardroom doors. Ilara was about to walk into both. The night outside was silent, but inside the apartment, light glowed from a dozen screens. Ilara sat at the sleek kitchen table, her expression calm and unreadable. The twins were asleep in the next room, small shapes under matching quilts. Their soft breathing was the only proof of peace left in her life. This place wasn't home, it was precision. White walls, organized shelves, a faint scent of cedar. It wasn't a hideout, it was a command center. She slid a small hardware key into her laptop and entered a code. The screen blinked once, then dozens of secure files opened like the quiet click of dominoes falling. Helios secure access granted. A new window appeared. Secure conference, encrypted channel active. 3 small faces appeared on the screen, each in their own corner of the world. John Everett, Helios's longtime corporate attorney, looked weary but focused. He had been her mother's legal shield for decades, and now, quietly, hers. Priya Nair, the forensic accountant, had sharp eyes behind thin glasses. She'd handled Helios's compliance team during several mergers. Ken Douglas, the chief of security, broad-shouldered, calm, and loyal, had known Ilara since she was a teenager visiting her mother's offices. John spoke first. "Ilara, we heard about Marcus's wedding. I'm sorry." She shook her head. "Don't be. I needed him to show his hand." Ken leaned closer to the camera. "You're safe now, right? Location locked?" "Safe enough," Ilara said. "Now we work." She opened a file labeled Orion Integrity Review, Priority. Her tone sharpened. "Begin the Orion Internal Audit Extension. Trigger the vendor compliance pull. Priya, cross-match Marcus Hale's expense accounts with procurement records. Any irregularities, flag immediately." Priya typed fast. "Already started. There are inconsistencies. Consulting fees paid to non-existent vendors, duplicated invoices. He's covering gaps, sloppy ones." Ilara leaned forward. "He thought Helios wouldn't see them. He's wrong." John adjusted his glasses. "This could justify a Clause 12.4 audit. Pre-signing, preemptive. It'll freeze Orion's access until you clear it." Ilara nodded. "Do it. No one tells Marcus or his board yet. He'll find out the way the rest of the world does." Her voice softened slightly as she looked at her mother's framed photo beside the laptop. "She warned me years ago about Orion's tactics. Said if a counterparty negotiator is compromised." Priya finished the sentence quietly, quoting the Helios M&A policy written by Eleanor Pierce herself. "Acquire, don't partner." Ilara smiled faintly. "Exactly." For a few moments, the only sound was the steady hum of processors and the soft tapping of keys. The plan was in motion. John cleared his throat. "You're not doing this out of anger, are you?" Ilara looked directly into the camera. "No, I'm doing it out of structure. He built his career lying about loyalty. My mother built a system to expose men like him. I'm just finishing the equation." Ken's monitor flickered. "Hold on. I'm patching into the Orion compliance server. There's a mirrored feed. Someone else tried accessing these same files last month." "Who?" Ilara asked. Ken typed, his fingers moving quickly. "Trace shows a hotel Wi-Fi. 2 months ago." He paused. "Under Chloe Rivers' name." The air in the room changed. Ilara sat back, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "Pull the footage." Seconds later, a grainy lobby video filled the screen. Marcus and Chloe walked in together, laughing. He carried a briefcase. She handed him a folder with Helios's watermark faintly visible on its cover. John muttered, "That's corporate espionage, Ilara. She leaked something." Ilara's pulse stayed steady. "No," she said slowly. "She stole something she didn't understand. Let her think it matters. I'm not done setting the board yet." The twins shifted in their sleep, one of them murmuring softly. Ilara's voice gentled for a moment, the calm before another storm. When you've both had everything taken, the only thing left to lose is fear. Priya looked worried. What's the next move? Ilara closed the file and stood. Schedule the Helios boardroom for 9 a.m. sharp. Make sure security knows exactly who enters and leaves. Ken nodded. Already on it. But before the call ended, his screen flashed red. Wait, Ilara, there's something else. You should see this. He brought up another feed. It was live. A camera view of Marcus's office. The door slightly open, voices inside. Ken zoomed in, adjusting the sound. Marcus's voice was unmistakable, arrogant, and confident. Tomorrow's the day, Chloe. Once the ink dries, Helios is finished. We'll be untouchable. Ilara didn't blink. No, she whispered. You'll be mine. The screen flickered once, capturing Chloe's hand resting on Marcus's chest. Ilara stared at them. Two people who thought they had won. Her reflection in the dark screen looked calm, dangerous, and certain. Morning was coming, and with it, reckoning. The video froze on Marcus and Chloe's faces, caught mid-laughter, their bodies close, their betrayal undeniable. The flicker of the pause footage lit Ilara's calm, expressionless face. Ken, she said evenly, trace the first time they met like this. Ken's fingers flew across the keyboard. Multiple windows opened. Receipts, security logs, timestamps. Hotel meeting records, he murmured. Look at this. First booking, 6 months before your mother's final hospitalization. Ilara's hand stilled. Before the decline, Ken scrolled through the records, reading softly. Marcus Hale, conference suite, reservation adjusted by guest Chloe Rivers. Same billing card, same nights, multiple stays. The silence in the room thickened. John exhaled slowly. So it wasn't sudden, it was planned. Ilara's eyes didn't move from the screen. She comforted me through my mother's illness, while she was sleeping with my husband. Ken switched screens again. There's more. On one window, a recovered text thread appeared, partially deleted messages restored from Marcus's phone backup. Chloe's name glowed in pale blue. Chloe. She's too busy with the hospital. Push the prenup now. Chloe. Sell the house before she wakes up. It'll look clean. Marcus. You really think she'll sign? Chloe. She's soft, Marcus. She always has been. She doesn't fight. Ilara leaned back in her chair, a faint trace of a bitter smile forming. She was right about one thing. I didn't fight then. Priya's quiet voice cut through the moment. There's also financial movement. Chloe received 3 separate transfers from Marcus's consulting bonus account. The first one coincides with that first hotel stay. The betrayal was no longer emotional. It was systematic. Ilara closed her eyes briefly, and a flashback played in her mind. Years earlier, college, the sunlit campus library, 2 young women, Ilara and Chloe, laughing quietly. Ilara handed Chloe a folder. This internship is solid. My mom's connections can open the door for you. Chloe's eyes sparkled, gratitude bright and sincere. You're saving my life. Weeks later, Ilara's mother mentioned the scandal, someone falsifying travel reimbursements. Chloe was dismissed. Ilara defended her then. She made a mistake, she'd said, but Chloe never forgave the humiliation. That day, the seed of resentment was planted, small, buried, but alive. Back in the present, the pieces aligned like a cruel mosaic. Chloe hadn't fallen in love with Marcus. She'd chosen him. He was the weapon she needed to wound Ilara. Ken switched feeds again. There's something else. A still image filled the screen. Chloe at Ilara's dining table, smiling during a casual visit. Her phone was angled toward a stack of papers beside a cup of coffee. Zooming in revealed the faint outline of the Helios Holdings board meeting agenda. The header, the date, clear as day. Ilara spoke quietly. That's the photo she took. She didn't even know what she was stealing. Priya's eyes widened. We cross-checked it. That exact document was emailed anonymously to Orion's rival 2 days later. But the sender IP traces back to... She hesitated. Marcus's laptop. John's jaw clenched. He used his own system? Idiot! Ilara didn't move, her face unreadable. Not idiot, she said softly. Arrogant. He thought no one would ever look. The room fell into a tense silence. Finally, she turned to Priya. Lock the Helios servers. Tag every file they accessed. I want to know exactly what they tried to sell. Priya nodded and began typing. Ken leaned back, eyes narrowing. What's the plan if they actually shared something critical? Ilara's answer came like steel wrapped in calm. Then we do what Helios policy dictates. She opened a document on her laptop, the old corporate handbook her mother had written. Her finger traced the highlighted line. When betrayal threatens the foundation, do not rebuild with it. Acquire the threat and bury it within your walls. Ilara looked back at the frozen image of Marcus and Chloe, the lovers laughing in the hotel lobby. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Tomorrow they walk into the walls I built. A notification pinged on her laptop. Audit complete, irregularities found. Ilara's eyes met the camera lens. Send me everything. Because in the morning, she wouldn't just expose them. She'd erase them. The digital clock on the wall hit 6 on AM sharp, and the Helios war room came alive. Dozens of monitors lit up, displaying charts, contracts, and glowing lines of code that mapped Orion's financial guts like a living heartbeat. At the center of it all sat Ilara, hair pulled back, eyes cold with focus. Around her were the trusted few, Priya, the forensic accountant, John, the corporate attorney, and Ken, the security chief, each with coffee cups untouched. The room felt less like an office and more like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Priya, Ilara said, her tone crisp. Show me everything. Priya tapped her tablet and numbers appeared across the wall-sized screen. We started the Orion audit at midnight. What we found? She hesitated, then continued. It's not small. A series of invoices filled the screen, each from companies that didn't exist. Inflated marketing payments, Priya explained. And these, she highlighted another cluster, duplicate vendor shells. They all route back to one consulting firm tied to Marcus's cousin under a different last name. John frowned. So he was using family fronts to funnel Helios's investment money before the deal even closed. Ilara's face didn't move, but her fingers pressed against the table. How far back? 6 months, Priya said, right before your mother's final board session. Ken spoke next. We checked timestamps. He backdated expenses to make Orion's quarter look strong, just enough to impress your mother's negotiators. It's classic manipulation. The wall changed again. Screens showed side-by-side comparisons. Orion's fake revenue spikes mirrored against real-time Helios audit flags. The proof was undeniable. Priya looked at Ilara, her voice softening. Marcus built this fraud to sell himself as a visionary. He needed Helios to bite. John folded his arms. He didn't realize Helios already belonged to the woman sitting in this room. Ilara finally stood, the reflection of the data glowing against her face. Her tone turned quiet, almost gentle. He gambled with my mother's legacy to impress strangers. He thought he was hunting profit. She paused, eyes distant. A flashback came unbidden. Her mother, Eleanor Pierce, years ago in her office, firm and graceful. When wolves circle, you don't run, Eleanor had said, signing a policy draft. You buy the forest they hunt in. The memory faded, leaving Ilara with a calm that looked almost dangerous. She turned back to the team. We invoke Clause 12.4 of Helios's integrity policy. Effective immediately, Orion is under internal fraud review. Notify the board. John looked up from his notes. You're converting the partnership? Not converting, Ilara said. Acquiring. We'll buy Orion outright and clean the rot from the inside. The room fell silent for a beat. Then Ken nodded. Security will control access. No one enters or exits the boardroom without your approval. Ilara walked toward the large window overlooking the waking city. The sun was rising, clean light cutting through the skyline like a blade. Priya broke the silence. Ilara, what will you say to him when he sees you? Ilara's reflection in the glass almost smiled. Nothing, she said. He'll understand when the papers hit the table. John checked his watch. Board seated for 9, he reminded her softly. Are you sure you want to be the one to walk in? She turned toward him, her voice low and steady. I was born in that room. She reached for her coat, slid her mother's gold pen into her pocket, and glanced once at the screen. Marcus's smiling photo from a company newsletter. Her eyes hardened. Let's make sure he's smiling when I walk in. As she left the room, Ken's monitor pinged, an alert flashing red. He frowned. Wait, someone just accessed the Orion network again. This time, from inside Helios. The camera feed froze on Alara's unreadable face as the alarm light blinked across the wall. The hallway outside the Helios boardroom was a corridor of glass and sunlight. At 8:59 a.m., the air itself seemed to hum. Every surface gleamed. Polished floors, steel fixtures, flawless windows looking out over a city that had no idea it was about to witness the quietest, sharpest revenge in corporate history. Alara stood perfectly still at the end of the hall. Her reflection on the glass wall looked nothing like the woman Marcus had thrown out weeks ago. Her black suit was tailored and exact, her mother's gold pen clipped to her jacket pocket. No tears, no tremble, just command. Through the glass, she could see Marcus Hale seated at the head of the boardroom table, performing confidence for an audience that didn't truly respect him. His voice carried faintly through the walls. Smooth, rehearsed, dripping arrogance. Ladies and gentlemen, he said to the assembled Helios and Orion executives, this partnership will mark the beginning of a new age for both companies. I've always said Helios has potential, but with Orion's innovation, we'll turn that potential into power. Beside him sat Chloe Rivers, glowing in pale pink, flipping through her speaking notes. She leaned toward Marcus with that too-practiced smile. You look perfect, she whispered. Marcus smirked. I always do. Around the table, a dozen Helios executives exchanged polite looks, trying not to show their discomfort. They didn't know yet. Only a handful of them had been informed that the chairwoman herself would be arriving to lead the signing. A young assistant entered quietly. Everyone, please take your seats, she announced. The chairwoman is on her way. The words sliced through the room like a bell. Marcus straightened his tie. Chairwoman? He laughed under his breath. Helios still running that matriarch act, huh? Must be some token old name on the paperwork. Chloe chuckled softly, though her eyes darted toward the door. Relax, she murmured. Whoever she is, she signs, you shake hands, we celebrate. Outside, Alara took one last deep breath. She could almost hear her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Walk in slow. Power doesn't rush. She nodded once to Ken, who stood by the glass doors in a black suit, now functioning as security detail. He gave a subtle signal. Everything was ready. At 9 a.m. sharp, the assistant's voice carried again, firm and clear. Please stand for the chairwoman of Helios Holdings. Chairs scraped back. The room shifted from chatter to tension. The double glass doors opened. Alara Hale stepped in. No music, no announcement beyond the title, just the sound of heels against marble. Every face turned toward her. Every expression froze. Marcus blinked once, twice. For a full 3 seconds, he didn't breathe. Alara, his voice cracked. What are you doing here? Chloe's lips parted slightly, color draining from her face. The papers in her hand trembled. Alara said nothing. She walked slowly to the head of the table, her gaze steady. The executives, once confused, were now realizing the impossible truth. The name on every corporate document, the one Marcus had mocked as an invisible relic, belonged to the woman now standing before them. She stopped beside Marcus, who had half risen from his chair. Please, she said quietly, stay seated. He sank back down, unable to look away. Alara placed a thick folder on the table, embossed with the Helios crest. Before we sign, she said, her voice calm but commanding, there's an addendum. She opened the folder, sliding a single sheet toward him. The paper rustled like thunder in the silence. This, she continued, contains findings from an internal audit. Vendor inconsistencies, duplicate accounts, falsified invoices, your signature on all of them. Marcus's eyes darted across the page, panic blooming behind his composure. You can't possibly... Alara lifted her mother's gold pen, uncapped it with a quiet click, and placed it beside the paper. This is the only pen that matters today, she said softly. Every camera in the room recorded his silence. Every whisper of her authority filled the space he used to own. Alara finally met his gaze. You wanted Helios to crawl to your terms, remember? I'm here to make sure that happens, just not the way you imagine. Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Chloe's voice broke through instead, weak, trembling. Alara, wait, this is all a misunderstanding. Alara didn't even look at her. Security, she said. Ken stepped forward from the doorway. The executive stared, unsure whether to breathe or watch. Alara turned a page in the folder. Clause 12.4 of the Helios Integrity Policy. When a counterparty negotiator is under fraud review, Helios may convert the partnership into an acquisition to protect shareholders. Marcus's face drained of color. What are you saying? Ilara's voice was smooth as glass. I'm saying, Marcus, Helios isn't partnering with Orion. We're buying it. The room erupted, voices, whispers, disbelief. Ilara's eyes stayed locked on his. You built your kingdom on lies, she said quietly. I built mine on truth. Let's see which one lasts. Marcus's hand trembled over the document. John's voice echoed from the speakerphone. Chairwoman, the legal team's ready. Ilara didn't blink. Good. Then let's begin. As she reached for the pen, Ken's phone buzzed with an urgent alert. Unauthorized media presence outside the boardroom. The first headline already uploaded. Breaking, CEO Marcus Hale faces fraud allegations during $900 million Helios deal. Ilara's eyes flicked toward the window. The world was already watching. The tension in the Helios boardroom could have been cut with a knife. The panoramic windows poured sunlight across the long glass table, illuminating the piles of contracts and cameras now discreetly recording every angle. Marcus sat stiffly, trying to rebuild his composure. Sweat glistened along his collar despite the icy air. Chloe sat beside him, her manicured fingers trembling as she flipped the same page back and forth in her binder. The room had grown unbearably still. At the head of the table, Ilara stood, shoulders square, voice calm. Her mother's gold pen gleamed in her hand like a symbol of judgment. Before we continue, she began, let's confirm the transaction value. She nodded toward Priya, who appeared on the large screen beside them from Helios headquarters. Priya's voice was steady. The final valuation, $900 million. A collective murmur rippled through the room. Marcus straightened, his ego reviving for a heartbeat. That's right, he said quickly, seizing the moment. $900 million. A new chapter for both our companies. This is what I've been fighting for. Ilara's hand rose gently, stopping him mid-sentence. You're right about one thing, she said softly. This is a new chapter. Just not the one you expected. The lights dimmed slightly as Ken, standing near the back, activated the digital projector. The screen behind Ilara filled with documents, account ledgers, and signature trails. Ilara turned to the audience. Before we finalize this transaction, I am obligated by Helios corporate policy to disclose findings from a recent audit. These findings concern irregularities originating from Orion's executive accounts. Marcus's confidence wavered. Irregularities? He scoffed, forcing a laugh. Helios has no jurisdiction. She tapped the remote, and his voice cut off as the next slide appeared. A financial spreadsheet highlighting fraudulent transactions. This, Ilara said, is a series of inflated marketing invoices tied to non-existent vendors, each authorized under your digital signature, Marcus Hale. Gas filled the room. Chloe's eyes darted to Marcus. Ilara continued, voice even, controlled. Further investigation shows duplicate payments routed through a consulting firm owned by your cousin. Cross-matching timestamps reveal that you backdated expenses to falsify Orion's quarterly performance, just before pitching this very deal. Marcus went pale. His mouth opened, but Ilara didn't let him speak. Clause 12.4 of Helios's counterparty integrity policy states, if a negotiating partner is found to have engaged in fraudulent activity that threatens shareholder trust, Helios Holdings reserves the right to convert any active partnership into a full acquisition. She paused to let the words settle. Effective immediately, we are converting this transaction. Helios Holdings will acquire Orion Group in full. Shock tore through the room. Board members whispered. Chloe's binder slipped from her trembling hands. Marcus looked as though the air had left his lungs. That's not legal, he snapped, voice rising. You can't do that. Ilara didn't flinch. It's already done. She slid a sleek USB drive across the table toward Priya's remote image. This contains every transaction record, backed by timestamps, bank trails, and digital verifications. Priya nodded on the screen. Confirmed. Legal review is complete. Orion executives who complied with the audit will retain their positions. Those who didn't, she hesitated, will be reported to the authorities. Ilara turned her gaze directly to Marcus. Marcus Hale, as acting CEO of Orion, you are hereby terminated for cause, effective immediately. Security stepped forward. Marcus's face contorted between fury and disbelief. Ilara, you can't. After everything I built for you, she cut in, voice soft but slicing. You didn't build anything for me. You stole from my mother's legacy and from the people who trusted you. Then, without looking at Chloe, she added, Chloe Hart, you will be contacted regarding misappropriated property and conspiracy to defraud. Chloe stood abruptly. Ilara, please, I didn't know. Marcus told me. Ilara didn't even blink. You told him how to hurt me, Chloe. That's what you did. You just never expected I'd be watching. Marcus shoved his chair back, standing so fast it toppled behind him. You'll regret this, he shouted. You think money and a board title make you untouchable? You're nothing without me. Ilara leaned forward slightly, her voice calm, controlled, every word a blade. You threw out your wife and daughters because you thought they were a burden. You betrayed your best friend for greed. You mocked my grief, Marcus. She slid one last document toward him, his own signed fraud admission, compiled from his emails. I didn't need to trap you, she said quietly. You did that yourself. The cameras in the room caught everything. The arrogance, the unraveling, the slow collapse of a man who thought he was invincible. Marcus's anger cracked into desperation. Ilara, please. Think of the girls, he said, voice breaking. The room went still again. Every head turned toward her. Ilara didn't move for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her words were quiet enough to make everyone lean closer. I am thinking of them, she said. That's why you're leaving with nothing. Security stepped in. Marcus tried to speak again, but his voice was drowned by the sound of his own chair scraping across the floor. Chloe followed, her eyes red, her future dissolving in the reflection of the glass walls. Ilara turned to the Helios team. Proceed with the acquisition, she instructed calmly. Let's finish what my mother started. As she gathered the papers, a low chime from Ken's phone broke the silence. He frowned at the message. Ilara, he said carefully, you need to see this. Marcus isn't heading downstairs. He's talking to someone in the hallway. He's not alone. Ilara looked up slowly, her expression unreadable. Then he hasn't learned yet, she murmured. Good. Let's teach him how endings work. The hallway outside the Helios boardroom was suddenly quiet after the storm inside. The echo of Marcus's shouting still lingered faintly, like smoke after a fire. The glass walls shimmered with morning light, but the space between Ilara and Marcus felt cold, airless, like the final stretch before a verdict. Security had escorted Chloe down the opposite corridor, her protests fading with distance. Now only Marcus Hale remained, his tie crooked, his eyes red with rage and disbelief. Ilara, he said, voice cracking, you can't just walk away like this. You can't take everything from me. Ilara stood calm, arms at her sides. Her mother's gold pen glinted in her hand. I didn't take anything, Marcus. You gave it away. You just didn't realize it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as though they were still husband and wife sharing a secret. I didn't know you owned Helios. No one did. You hid it from me. Her eyes lifted, steady and unflinching. You never asked what I did at night, she said quietly. You assumed I was small because I stayed silent. You assumed wrong. He opened his mouth, but she kept speaking, calm, deliberate. While you were chasing applause, I was studying my mother's playbooks. Every contract, every boardroom fight. You thought grief made me weak. It just made me invisible long enough to see who you really were. Marcus swallowed hard, looking around the empty corridor as though searching for an escape. Ilara, please, he said, his voice softening. Don't do this. Whatever this is, it's gone too far. Think about the girls. Her face didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly around the pen. I am thinking about them, she said. That's why this ends today. They need stability, not chaos. The court will see who created that chaos. His voice cracked again, half desperate, half angry. You'll turn them against me? No, she said simply. You already did that yourself the night you threw us out. He winced as if struck. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched between them like an open wound. Finally, Marcus reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded set of papers, the divorce documents he'd once served her. We don't have to make this ugly, he said, forcing a shaky smile. Just sign these. I'll walk away quietly. You keep your empire. I'll rebuild mine. Ilara looked down at the papers, her expression unreadable. Then she met his eyes and said softly but firmly, No. He blinked. No? I'm not signing that, she said. You threw us out when you thought we had nothing. You made it clear what my worth was to you. She raised the gold pen and turned slightly toward the boardroom door. I'm signing something else today. Marcus's breath hitched. What do you mean? She paused, her voice quiet and sharp. The final papers making the acquisition of Orion official. The company you tried to use against me. Now it belongs to me. Every file, every dollar, every mistake you made. Marcus took a small step back. You can't. I already did, she said. For a second, something human flickered in his expression, a recognition of the woman he'd underestimated. He looked at the pen in her hand, then at her calm face. You learned all this from her, didn't you? Your mother. Ilara's gaze softened for the first time. A quick flashback flickered through her mind. Her mother, Eleanor Pierce, guiding her hand across a signature line years ago. A signature can end a life, or start one, her mother had said. Know what you're writing. The memory faded. Ilara exhaled slowly, her face composed. I know exactly what I'm writing, she said. Marcus's voice broke into anger again, the last fragments of his pride clinging. This isn't justice, Ilara. It's revenge. No, she replied quietly. It's balance. For a moment he looked at her, really looked, and realized she wasn't the woman he dismissed months ago. She wasn't the grieving wife or the quiet mother. She was something far more dangerous, a woman who no longer needed to explain herself. Before he could say another word, the door behind her opened. Ken stepped out, calm but alert. Chairwoman, he said, we have a situation. The press has gathered outside. They know about the deal and the fraud. Marcus's eyes widened. The press? Ilara didn't look at him. She handed her pen to Ken. Good, she said softly. Let them in. Ken nodded and opened the outer doors. A flood of flashing lights and camera shutters filled the hallway. Marcus flinched at the sound. Ilara stood still, face serene in the glare. And as the reporters shouted her name, she knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of hers. The top floor of Helios Holdings glowed with afternoon sunlight. The storm had passed. Glass walls shimmered, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond them. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and new paper. Clean, final, alive. Ilara sat at her mother's old desk, now hers, the surface immaculate except for one folder and one pen, the same gold pen that had witnessed both endings and beginnings. Across the room, Mia and Ava, her 5-year-old twins, sat at a small round table near the window. Crayons rolled across the glass surface as they colored pictures of houses and smiling suns. Their laughter filled the room like a soft melody, ordinary, healing. The television on the wall was muted, but the bold red banner across the screen said everything. Breaking news. Helios acquires Orion Group in $900 million takeover fraud. Probe names former executive Marcus Hale. Ilara watched the headline for a moment, her expression unreadable. John Everett, her mother's longtime attorney, entered the room with calm professionalism. He set a document on her desk. It's official, he said. The asset freeze was approved. Civil suits are moving forward. Chloe Hart is cooperating in the data theft inquiry. Ilara nodded slowly. Good, she said. Let her cooperate. She'll need it. John hesitated. And Marcus? He's already made bail, John replied. But every account he touched is locked. He won't rebuild easily. A quiet moment settled between them. For the first time in weeks, Ilara allowed herself to breathe fully. She turned the muted television off and reached into the drawer. Inside was an old photo frame, the family picture that used to sit by her bed. She looked at it for a long moment. Marcus's smiling face seemed foreign now, a ghost of a man who never really knew her. She opened the frame gently, removed the photo, and placed it face down in the drawer. Then from her bag she took out a new picture, taken that morning by Ken when the twins had rushed into her office after the press conference. It was of her and the girls, sunlight spilling over their faces, laughter genuine and free. She placed it in the frame, centered it carefully, and set it beside the gold pen. The act was simple, but it was the quiet rewriting of her story. John smiled faintly. "Your mother would be proud," he said. Ilara met his eyes. "She taught me to finish what she started." She opened the final folder on the desk, the last legal page of the Orion acquisition. Not a divorce decree, not an ending born from weakness. This was control, clarity, and legacy. She took the gold pen in her hand and signed her name with steady grace. Her voice was soft but certain, almost like a whisper carried from the past. "He took my home, so I took his company. Grief didn't make me weak, it made me precise." She set the pen down gently, exhaling as though releasing years of silence. At the side table, Mia looked up, curious. "Mom," she asked quietly, "are we safe now?" Ilara smiled, warm, real, full of something deeper than victory. "Completely," she said. The twins returned to their drawings, giggling. Outside, the sun caught the glass tower just right, turning it into a mirror of gold. The camera panned back to Ilara as the office door opened again. Ken Douglas, the head of security, stepped inside with a new folder tucked under his arm. He placed it on her desk. The label read, "Whistleblowers, Internal Review." Ilara glanced at it, then at him. He smiled knowingly. "Looks like Helios isn't the only company with secrets." Ilara's fingers brushed the folder edge, but she didn't open it yet. Her eyes moved to her daughters, then to the new family photo on her desk. For now, she thought, the empire is safe. The camera lingered on her reflection in the window, strong, centered, unbreakable, before fading to black. Strength isn't loud. Sometimes it signs its name quietly and changes everything. If you felt the power of Ilara's journey, her quiet revenge, her hidden strength, her rebirth, share this story, because somewhere, someone still believes silence means weakness. Show them it doesn't.